Ecuador was one of the safest countries in the Western Hemisphere, which is an unsafe place. Latin America has very high homicide rates in comparison with the rest of the world, but Ecuador tended to be the exception. And in fact, by the end of Correa's presidency, Rafael Correa's presidency in 2017, Ecuador had under 5.8 homicides per 100,000 people. That was one of the lowest in the region. Last year, 2023, Ecuador had one of the highest homicides rates with the region. 46 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants. That's an 8-fold increase from 2017 to 2023. In just 6 years, the situation became untenable. Gangs are running large parts of the country, on the coast, particularly access to ports for the export of cocaine. And the reason why that happened, well, there are a number of reasons. Institutional crumbling, political instability, major austerity drive driven by the IMF, with cutbacks in budgets, including the closing of key ministries. Incredibly, they closed the Ministry of Interior, they closed the Ministry of Security, they closed the Ministry of Justice, which was in charge of the penitentiary system. And we've seen in Ecuador over the last few years major penitentiary prison riots with massacres inside prisons, 500 people being killed in the last 2 years alone. So a crumbling security, which I would blame on mismanagement on the part of the government, not helped, obviously, by external factors such as the COVID crisis and so on and so forth. So now we have this new president who came to power in November, so very recently, and who faces the situation and has promised to be tough on crime and is trying to be a real tough guy and shows he's very young, inexperienced, 35 years old, son of a billionaire. So there were some doubts as to whether you would have the capacity to deal with this. And his approach has been, I'm going to be tough on crime. And in order to look like he's tough on crime, he's called for this referendum, which we are going to have today in Ecuador, 11 questions, essentially punitive measures. That's what he's asking for in a referendum: longer jail terms for offenders. He's looking extradition to the United States, militarization of the streets of Ecuador, and all those kinds of measures that he thinks will look popular. These measures, the 11 questions, 9 are about security, and they've all been portrayed as things that could help resolve the security situation. I personally don't think they're very serious proposals. You're not going to resolve the security situation by extending prison sentences. There's a lot of academic, scientific work around the world on crime and on insecurity that shows that you don't reduce insecurity just by raising some of the the sentencing. And militarization of the street is already happening. It's happening through a state of exception. Now, he wants to normalize this by changing the constitution, but so far it's not really having a huge impact.